Ray Dalio, the billionaire and former hedge fund manager, has been all over the news promoting his new book called The Changing World Order, an alarming summary of world history that essentially hints at the fact that the United States is in a transition period headed downhill in terms of its power and status on the world stage. Although not explicitly stating it, Dalio concludes that various factors are pushing the US into the wrong direction, a deadly cycle that started with absurd money printing and will likely end with internal and external conflict. While this may seem shocking on the surface, it's not exactly surprising to hear that empires eventually fade. Every single one will face the same fate as the ones before it, death and decline, but this isn't the surprising part about Dalio's prediction. The shocking part is centered on the timing. He claims that recent actions by the Federal Reserve are pushing the economy into a tailspin. As you likely know, 2 years ago a pandemic began. In order to fund the various policies and rescue plans to deal with this massive disaster, the Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars. Soon, prices started rising everywhere and it was excused as transitory. Now with record high inflation, the worry is that we're undergoing a spiral, a situation that in the past has taken out entire currencies, most notably the Weimar Republic in the 1920s. Obviously, the situation today is much different, but regardless, despite its status as the world reserve currency, many are getting worried that the dollar is next, Dalio included. He recently appeared on Yahoo News where he gave a shocking answer to a routine inflation question. Take a listen.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and this is the only way I think I can maybe ask this one, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you about inflation right now?
Oh, I don't know, like an 8 to 10 or something like that. We're beginning a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is a shift from a mindset, one mindset, and positioning of that mindset to another mindset and another positioning of that. So, for example, the mindset that we were in was that you have low inflation, and when you're owning bonds and you're owning cash, or you are operating one way, and you don't worry about that, and companies don't worry about it in their inventories, or having larger inventories, or homeowners don't worry about inflation as much in the purchases of their houses and so on. Once that shift begins, it causes a reinforcing dynamic. It's like everybody is long bonds. We've been in a 40-year bull market in bonds. And so it's been fine to have. And when that shift starts to take place, you see behavioral shifts that reinforce that cycle in the paradigm. So for example, when there is the selling of bonds, that it makes it more inflationary in and of itself, because the amount of debt that has to be sold is not just the deficit, but also the amount of debt that's being sold is those bonds. So now interest rates have to rise a lot, or the Federal Reserve has got to come in there and buy more. And then you get wages. People make wage settlements that and such things. So a paradigm shift is beginning to take place, and that will be also self-reinforcing. And it's taking place in this context of the conflict, which then creates the breakdown of efficient systems. Each country wants to be self-sufficient. It needs to protect itself. And in being self-sufficient in that way, then you have less efficiencies in the system. And all of that becomes self-reinforcing. So it's all happened before. It's all happened many, many times before. That's covered both in the video and the book. So it's, yeah, I'm concerned about that.
So what Dalio just said there is that he's extremely concerned about inflation, calling it a paradigm shift. Basically, in layman terms, he's worried about this thing we will call the inflation mindset. You see, before all these crazy price hikes were happening, companies and people had a firm, relaxed outlook on cash and bonds, meaning they were never worried about storing their wealth in checking or savings accounts. They knew that a year from now they could buy the same things they were buying for relatively the same exact price. Yes, maybe there was a 1 to 2% change, but overall this never altered their short-term outlook on cash. Today that mindset is changing. For example, if you have $100K saved in an account to put down on a down payment for a home, you should be worried. Last year, homes appreciated 20%, meaning your money is getting erased day by day if that price action continues. This causes you to jump into the market early, because if you know prices are going up, you may as well spend right now. The same goes for businesses who buy raw materials. If you know steel prices are going to be 2 times more next year, why not just load up on inventory right now? This change in mindset causes something called the inflationary loop, a self-fulfilling prophecy where consumers worried about higher prices load up and stockpile, causing massive jumps in demand, shortfalls in supply, and increased wages. This violent feedback loop can spiral out of control, and the only way to stop it is to essentially ruin the economy by temporarily jacking up the interest rates. Besides this, you have the bond side of the equation. You see, bonds are essentially guaranteed money, but when a bond is paying you 3% a year, but inflation is 10%, you're losing by holding this investment vehicle, so naturally people sell the bond. This causes the interest rate of the bond to go up, and when the rate goes up, it affects everything around it. For example, mortgage rates, which are tied to the 10-year treasury. The reason why this situation is so dangerous is because not everyone can agree what the best course of action is. You see, the Federal Reserve can't raise rates too much without inducing a recession, but at the same time, they can't let inflation get out of control. So what they try to do is something called the soft landing, which basically is this. They're going to try to raise rates gradually in hopes that it reduces inflation without damaging the economy. To many, this is the equivalent of landing a coin on its side, nearly impossible. According to most people, you only have 2 choices. Raise the rate Paul Volcker style and ruin the economy but save the currency, or ignore inflation and ride through a storm by creating a complete currency disaster. This is why you'll hear people say that the Fed is stuck between a rock and a hard place, but they still think they have an out, called the soft landing. Take a listen to Dalio react to this plan.
So is the soft landing just pie in the sky stuff?
When you say soft landing, there's no going to be, it's pie in the sky stuff. I think that most likely what we're going to have is a period of stagflation.
As you just heard there, Dalio has no belief in such an outcome, agreeing that it's a pie-in-the-sky fantasy. The truth is, next year will prove incredibly important in determining where this economy is headed, how the Federal Reserve reacts to this massive inflation storm, and how the people react to a widening wealth gap will prove to be the bedrock for what is to come in the next 10 years. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it.